that's what all came out. And all of that wood was a bit damp, so I took 100% of it out. I still got to vacuum out the final dust, but it's out all the way down to that slurry that was put in there. This crack right here, that doesn't go through the liner. This is just that thickened slurry that they put in underneath that plywood. And so that's the only thing that crack is in, is that slurry whenever it dried or cured. And you can see that 2 of the bolts went through it there too. Actually 3, because that's where the screw that went into the compression post was at too. So anyway, not concerned about that at all. I'm not going to take that out because this is actually bonded to the liner on the inside, and the liner is perfectly fine, and I'm going to leave that alone. But this has been scuffed up real good. I took a little oscillating tool blade and scuffed it real good and got it roughed up real good. But didn't try to remove all of it. Like I say, it's just a filler. That's just a filler. I will have to take my new gel coat all the way down to that inside corner there around to be able to get rid of all of my cracks. All this will be ground down. All around here will be ground down, and then I'll try to tie in and blend in my new gel coat down at that inside radius all the way around. I do have to let this dry some. Now that I've got 100% of the wood out all the way down to that thickener there, it's not going to be nearly as wet now, but I still need to probably let that dry a bit, maybe overnight before I try to repair this, but I want it good and dry before I put the other back in. But what I'm going to do is mix up, I'll wet this out with just thin epoxy to start with, all everywhere in there, and then I will mix up some thickened with colloidal silica and put a bit of colloidal silica thickened epoxy down in here, and then I will set my new core. I haven't decided what I'm going to use yet. I think I'm going to just use some fiberglass cut from a hull from a salvage boat and just grind off the gel coat from it and just lay that into that thickened, and then I'll put another layer of thickened on top of that after wetting everything out. All surfaces will get wetted with wet epoxy first, and then set in the thickened, and then I will come back after grinding all of this down here. I will come back with a couple of layers of 1708 biaxial cloth and put it back in here and bond it best I can to these edges here good. And then once that cures, I'll use epoxy fairing compound and get it all like I want it, nice and smooth. And then once that cures and gets all sanded out, then I will put 3 or 4 coats of barrier paint on it, barrier coat on it, and get all that sanded. And then I will come back and prep it for gel coat. Okay, so I've got it all cleaned out. This is what I'm going to put in there for the majority of the thickness. This is 5/16 or maybe just a little thicker, just glass. And bevel that front edge to fit in there, like that. And this will set in a bed of thickened epoxy after everything's been wetted out first. I'm going to have to shorten it just a touch. Just trying to get everything as clean as I can, wiping everything down with some acetone. Let that flash off good. I got to get inside the boat and put some blue painter's tape on the underside of these holes so I don't have drips running inside the cabin. I am in the shade, but I'm under a shelter where there's no breeze blowing at all. So it's a bit warm under here. So I'm gonna have to move on with this stuff pretty quick. To start with, all I'm doing is just wetting out everything, at least the bottom side where it's going to be going in the hole there. Now, in addition to the colloidal silica, I also mixed in some chopped fiberglass strands. And the reason I did that was to give me some something to bind it together with to help it not crack. The colloidal silica is really good for the compression strength, but the chopped fiberglass strands will kind of bind it all together and help it not crack. Trying to squeeze some down in those holes. So this is mostly colloidal silica, but with a good little dollop of the chopped fiberglass strand. And it's not crazy thick. This is pretty level here, so I'm not worried about it running out. I'm going to make sure I've got it pushed in underneath that little lip, good and solid, with no air bubbles, no voids. Okay. Just kind of wiggling that in there really good to make sure I get the air out from under it. And that should be good. Okay, so that's my main, absolute main piece of structural reinforcing right there. And now I will wet that out and clean that edge up good, and then I'll start cutting 1708 glass and wet that in and put a few layers of that in there. pre-wet it out. I just splattered a little bit of resin up there. I got to remember to get that off. See, that's hanging over just about a ½ inch all the way around. And then because it's the matte layer up, I've got to be careful not to overwork this or I'll start pulling the fibers out everywhere. So I just want to make sure I get it good and wet. Fully saturated. This 1708 takes a lot of resin because of the thickness of it. I'm wetting it past where I need to so that it gives it enough weight so that the gravity will kind of try to curl it down for me. Okay, so that's my last layer of 1708 on this thing. That's 5 layers of 1708 over 5/16 thick solid chunk of fiberglass set in thickened epoxy resin. Well, I had to come out here a little after 11 o'clock at night to trim this, but I wanted to try to trim it with my razor knife at just the right time so I could trim it and not have to grind it all off. And I was able to trim it almost perfect fit just with my razor knife. And so now I won't have to put a grinder on it at all, just a sander to sand these edges and sand back that gel coat just a little bit here so my new gel coat will bond to it. But it's trimmed with just a razor knife to almost a perfect fit. It's no longer tacky, but it's still very soft. And when you catch it just like that, you can take a good sharp razor knife and you can just trim it to just like you need. Washing it off with some warm soapy water this morning to get that amine blush, that wax blush off of it. Okay, there it is, all washed and sanded and clean with acetone and ready for barrier paint. And I didn't use any filler at all. It's laying real flat, so I didn't have to use any filler. I don't think I'm gonna need any at all. I'm using West System 422 barrier coat additive into my West System 105 epoxy resin. Here's the third and final coat of barrier paint on this Mast base here. I'll let that cure for several days, maybe a week. And then I'll de-wax it again and give it a good sanding, and then it be ready for some gel coat. Getting ready to put some gel coat on this Mast base here. Got it all taped off. I've got it sanded out and wiped down with acetone. And I've got me a piece of Mylar to lay over it and a piece of glass to lay over that to hold it down flat. And yeah, I use glass, that way I can see through it to see if I've got bubbles or whatever. I will be using gel coat with wax in it. I'm going to try to get a heavy enough coat, being that this is pretty level here. I'm going to try to get a heavy enough coat in one go Well, I got my camera set up there and I forgot to turn it on. But I mixed up some gel coat and put it on here. Pretty heavy. Gel coat needs a pretty good amount of thickness to cure properly. And also you need a lot of depth for sanding out and polishing. Okay, got it wet sanded out. I sanded it with 200, then 400, then 800, and then 1,000. And I've got it pretty good. It's not perfect. As a matter of fact, I've actually got a couple of little tiny specks of trash in it that got in it that's still there. But you got to look like really close to see it. And the mast hinge covers, 75% of it. So anyway, so I'm gonna call that good. I think it's okay. Now it's wet right now. Obviously, I just rinsed it off from where I've been wet sanding it. But it turned out decent. I'm real pleased with the color match. I sometimes have difficulty with matching colors, but overall, I'm pretty pleased with that. Like I say, it's a good color match, a real good color match, and it should be a good repair.